All right, guys, I gotta tell you, I am wore out, man. I've been on it all day. Luckily, it didn't rain today, and the sun actually just came out about 45 minutes ago, so that's pretty awesome. I might go ahead and clean up my mess here, and I might go ahead and try to mow the yard because I really need to mow the yard. But anyway, I got more priorities, you know what I mean? Anyway, as you can see, chassis is completely stripped of all its stuff. There's no brake lines, fuel lines, A-arms, coil springs, leaf springs, rear end, none of that stuff's in the frame. It's completely a bare frame now, so this is just sitting on here. I was going to talk about it in the video here in a minute. So anyway, I found a couple of dumb things, which, you know, usually when you tear an old car apart, you usually find some pretty goofy stuff. One of the upper ball joints on the passenger side, they had a regular nut on it instead of a castle nut and a cotter pin, so that was pretty dangerous and stupid. So that will actually threw the nut away. But anyway, on the back, if you remember some of my old videos, I talked about how the car had a lean to one side by like 1 inch, and they had some of those aluminum spacers that you put inside coil springs and turn them and it stretches out the coil spring. They had two in the driver's side coil spring. So what I ended up finding when I laid the coil or the leafs out here is it's mixed match leaf. This one does not match this one. And look at the height difference in that. So there is my 1 inch lean basically. So I'm gonna have to try to track down a leaf spring. I know of a yard, salvage yard, an old one. It's not really in business anymore, but I've known the guy since I was like 10 years old, so I'm pretty sure I could get back out there. But anyway, they had a lot of old Tri-5 4-doors, if there's anything left. And what I had ended up doing, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, I don't even know how long ago it was, I'd bought a whole bunch of dash parts, all the dash parts, steering column, steering wheel, out of a 56 Bel Air. It had never been messed with. It had the horn ring on it. It had a Motorola, you know, factory option radio, push button radio in it with the factory 56 knurled knobs on it. But it had a, I want to say it had the rear speaker knob over toward the passenger side of the dash. I just don't remember. He had another 55 there that like that too. But anyway, this 56, it was a 4-door Bel Air, and it was down, the butt of it was down in a creek, so like the whole rear of the car was like below the taillights was gone. It was just rusted away. But there was so much junk on both sides of it, you couldn't get in the car because all the glass was in it. So that's why all that stuff stayed in there. And for years it stayed in there. But anyway, we tried to get the car out, and he couldn't get his tow truck started. Something was wrong with the fuel pump or something. So anyway, I told him, I said, well, I'll just come back this winter, because we were out there in the summer and we were getting ticks all over us, and it was just a mess. I was worried about snakes. So I told him I'd come back to, you know, during the winter and we'd get it out of there. So I ended up going back down there, and the car was gone. He ended up selling the car to somebody with my dash parts in it. So anyway, I kind of made a stink about it. So I pretty much have yard credit out there. Hopefully he remembers that. I will be sure and remind him. But anyway, I thought I would go over there because it's about an hour from here. I thought I would go down there and at least try because I don't want to spend any money. But since he kind of owes me, maybe I'll end up with a pair of leaf springs, some used ones. But anyway, let's just hope he remembers that. So anyway, I need to do that. But anyway, I got the chassis completely stripped, clean and bare, all the stuff off of it. I'm pretty happy. The chassis is in real nice shape now since I fixed the frame horn. I do have it one spot in the back to fix back here, and they've actually pulled with a chain both of these. So both of these are ripped out. So I'm going to try to straighten these out and re-weld that area. But I even thought about just cutting it out and building a new piece and putting it in there, and then going in there with a die grinder and getting the shape right. It'd probably be easier than trying to straighten that mess up. But anyway, there's a tweak in the rear frame rail back here, and it's just this part. The back side's fine. It's not tweaked or anything. It's just this. Somebody's probably put a jack under it or something. So I'm gonna try to get this dollied out. But the frame has no rust in it. Down on they will usually rust down this lower here. Now I had the rear jacked up real high a while ago getting the leaves out of it, but The frame is really nice. It's not tweaked out or anything. It's square, so that is very, very nice. I do believe this is the original rear end, which a 55 with a 6-cylinder, I think it's a 410 or 411, I think is what they came with, if I remember right. But I usually get rid of them rear ends because I just never have been much for them really low gears on them things. But I'm kind of thinking about putting a 10 bolt in it I have here that has 308 gear in it. And that way it'll be a little bit more highway friendly with that turbo 350 transmission. I've run turbo 350s in these cars with the factory rears for years, but you know, when you get out there on the turnpike at 75, 80, 85 miles an hour, it's just, that little small block's gonna be wound up, man, and I'm not down for that. This car's not gonna be a race car, it's gonna be a cruiser. So I just wanna be able to go to point A, point B very slowly, I guess you would say. But so I may go ahead and try to do a rear end swap while I'm here. Frames laying out here. It'd be so easy to work with. Other than I'll have to go back there and pull the rear end out of that car. And what that rear end is, it's actually out of a 79 Buick Century Aero turbo coupe. It's a really rare car, but it is severely rusted from an engine fire back in the 90s. And it was left out in the woods, and it is way, way rotted. Even half of the VIN number on the dash is rotted away. Like there's nothing left of the car. But the build sheet was inside the car, and it shows in the build sheet as a 308 gear. So that's pretty awesome. The bad part is it's 58 inches wide. These factory rears are 60 inches wide. Somebody from Iowa was trying to call me. Oh, you know what? I bet my extended warranty's out on my truck. I'll bet you money that's what's wrong. I don't know how many of those phone calls I get a week. I don't know how many of them phone calls you guys get a week. It's always about an extended warranty, and it's kind of funny. My truck's a 1987. I'm pretty sure that warranty went out a long time ago. But anyway, where was I? The rear end. It's a 58-inch wide rear. These factory rears are 60 inches wide. So luckily, I have here, brand new on the shelf, a pair of 1-inch aluminum spacers with the lug nuts, standard thread. So that is pretty awesome. I have run several sets of these through the years. I've never had issues. I know of people that have complained about them, but I've never had an issue with them. The only thing I can tell you, if you run these aluminum spacers like this, you need to treat them just like a brand new aluminum wheel. You need to drive the car, and then you need to take like 25 or 30, 50 miles or whatever it is, and then take the rear wheels off, or whatever these are on, take the wheels off, and make sure you retorque the lug nuts holding these spacers to the deal, because aluminum takes a seat, just like an aluminum wheel. That is a requirement to retighten your lug nuts, recheck them. They're always going to be loose again. They have to take a seat, basically. So I've never had an issue running them spacers through the years, knock on wood. I'm going to knock on wood right now, actually. But anyway, so 1-inch wide spacer on each side will make it 60 inches wide, so I'll have a 308 gear. The only problem is I don't know if I'm going to have a drive shaft here that will work. I have several drive shafts here. I'm just going to have to look. I have some stashed behind my air compressor. I have 2 in my shed. I think there's 2 out here. I have one from a long bed S10. I don't know if that'll work or not, but if anything, a long one is better because I can have it cut down or rebalanced. Having to get a whole new one made is an expense that I don't want to do. So I may get lucky and find one that actually works. We can hope. So anyway, I dug through all my hardware this morning. I have a whole bunch of new hardware everywhere. I've got grade 8 hardware, grade 5 CAD plated hardware. I've got stuff everywhere. So I drug out all my grade 8 hardware, and luckily I had a whole lot of grade 8 hardware, fine thread stuff to put on this chassis. I've got all the hardware, lock washers and regular nuts, lock washers and fine thread bolts to bolt the lower control arms on to the frame right here. It's going to take 8 of them. And there's actually 4 of them that are one length and 4 of them that are a different length. They're shorter. And I actually had them. I even have the hardware to bolt on the ball joints. They're fine thread grade 8. So that'll be pretty awesome. I even have the grade 8 hardware to go up here that bolt the A-arms on. These are not knurled, but it seems like some 55s had knurled bolts, if I remember right. I could be wrong, but anyway, these just take a regular bolt. So I've actually got the exact length in grade 8 fine thread that go in there, with nuts and lock washers. So, you know, all that new hardware, when I paint all these parts, it's going to end up looking fantastic in the end, because if you've been following my channel long enough, you know I'm a detail with hardware guy. I like hardware, makes a huge difference in details. But anyway, that's kind of what I'm wanting to do, is make sure this front frame stub itself is nice. I don't really care about all the back, but you know, when the hood's up, I at least want this to look nice. So I am going to try to make this front edge look a little bit nicer by, you know, making all that stuff clean. But as far as the rear and everything, you know, if I've got old, you know, used bolts or whatever, that'll be fine. But up here, I want it clean. I've got suspension stuff laid out over here, so this is pretty awesome. So another thing that's really kind of nice, back when I was doing my hardtop, I had bought a big pack of stainless steel Zerk fittings, and I even bought the ones, because these are bigger, the 90 degrees to fit this. So I have a whole bunch of these, and I have a whole bunch of these, and it's all stainless. So I'm going to change all the Zerk fittings out after I clean and paint all this, because these tie rods are tight. These are super tight. And I even have brand new boots, all 4 of them brand new in the packages from H&H. I don't even remember having those extra, but you know, I'll take this stuff apart, clean it, paint it, and put it back together. But this is the idler arm bearing kit somebody has put in here, and it's actually a nylon bushing in there, and I didn't know that. I've seen these before, you know, the old ones, but I've never seen a nylon one. I'm just going to clean it up real good and put it back together, put a new Zerk fitting on it. But this stuff will clean up pretty well. I ended up getting the U-bolts off without, you know, tearing up the threads or breaking them off or anything, so I'm going to reuse those. I normally would like to change out the U-bolts, but I just don't have the money. I'm just going to reuse the old ones. What I ended up doing was this is a thread cleaner die, and while this was still bolted in the car, I ran these up on the threads that were hanging out past the nut. I ran this all the way up and then back off, and then I sprayed PB Blaster on there. So when I went to take them off, they actually came off really nice. So, you know, all this stuff will get cleaned up and reused. I did find from where one of the shackle bushings was worn out and they kept driving it, it actually is flattened off. That little spot right there, a little bitty flattened off area from metal on metal contact on these rear shackle hangers. And I have one of these in a box in my shed that was a good used one, so that worked out good. One's good, that one had a wear spot, which is probably fine, but I'm going to go ahead, and since I have a good used one here, I'm just going to change it out. So the plan for tomorrow is to get the chassis right here. In the morning after my wife leaves for work, I'm going to get the chassis set in here. I'm going to level it front to back. I'm going to bolt the mock-up engine back to the transmission again, get it on the cherry picker, and set it off down in here. I'm going to use my floor jack at the tail shaft of the trans. I'm going to get my, you know, my carb flange zeroed out, so I have 3 degrees down at the tail shaft of the trans. And then I'm going to get my transmission cross member finalized in the frame, get those brackets welded to the frame, you know, build the tabs and all that, get that finalized. And I'll probably have that done by noon. But I kind of thought about going ahead and taking that 10 bolt out of that car tomorrow and maybe trying to get it swapped over, but I need those leaf springs first, so that kind of sucks. And I don't have that guy's number at that salvage yard anymore, so I'm gonna have to end up driving down there, and hopefully he's there. It's kind of a mess, you know, when you tear an old car apart, you're always gonna find stuff, and you're always gonna find bad stuff. And you know, overall, it could have been worse. I mean, the car could have been worse. At least my frame is square, and you know, I saved a lot of the stuff that came off of it. Anyway, that's the plan, guys. I guess that's. I'll do another video tomorrow because I'm sure I'll have the motor and trans set in it. Probably have the cross member on it. I still need to try to get the motor mounts here finalized. Boy, those rusted from me washing this frame yesterday with a garden hose. But anyway, I need to end up welding the bottom. I just have the bottom parts tack welded on. I need to get a full stitch on those, and then I need to cut out my plate with my cutoff wheel and get some sides on that and get it fully welded up. But I need to remove these things. If you've ever removed these off the frame, trying to get them off clean, they suck. I mean, it takes a long time. But I end up cutting right along through here, and then I'll go in there with a grinder and try to grind that off, and then I have to cut all these in pieces and then try to get all that stuff off clean. But they're just a mess to get off there. But I ended up getting my 2 pivots off of the frame, drilled the spot welds out of them, and knocked them off of there. Now I got to go back and spot weld or plug weld all that, and then grind it off flat. But anyway, I'm overall pretty happy with it. I got some repair to do back here on the chassis. They've used a chain or whatever on these oval holes trying to pull the car out, and it's ripped those out. I guess I'm going to try to straighten those up, hammer and dolly on them, and then I'll go back in there and weld those areas up and grind them where they're cracked. So that kind of sucks. But anyway, that's pretty much where I'm at. I got a big mess. I need to get it cleaned up before my wife gets home. And it's about 16 minutes of video. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. See you tomorrow.